Welcome to River Styx Nonfiction Q&A series, RSNF. I'm Claire Walla, nonfiction editor at River Styx, and I'm joined by River Styx assistant editor Matt Torralba Andrews. Today we're speaking with our guest, Stephanie N. Rodriguez, about her piece, The Chicken, the Goose, and the Gander, which readers and listeners can read online now in River Styx. Stephanie N. Rodriguez is a writer of fiction, poetry, and memoir in Austin, Texas. She is a Writers League of Texas 2021 Fellow and currently serves on the board of directors for the Writers League of Texas. Her work has appeared in the Journal of Latina Critical Feminism, Blue Mesa Review, River Teeth, The Pinch, Hippocampus Magazine, and elsewhere. You may read her work at snrodriguezwrites.com and follow her on Instagram at snrodriguezwrites. Stephanie, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So in the chicken, the goose, and the gander, one thing that struck us in reading it was there is a sense of entrapment from the beginning of the piece, from the enclosure, the situation of the fowl, as well as in the descriptions of being in your mother's home. But when writing the piece, we were wondering, when in that process, did you make the connection between your own experience and the story about the chicken, the goose, and the gander? And was this the seed in inspiring the piece?
I didn't even notice the connections until the first few drafts. What I believe was the seed of the story was mostly the title. When the title came to me, I was reading fables and fairy tales with my son, and I noticed a lot of geese and wolves are in fables, and it reminded me of the interaction that I had seen between this gander and this chicken. And I always knew that I wanted to tell the story about them and like celebrate them. So this was my first attempt of weaving that story together. And yeah, like I said, it was after the first few drafts that I was noticing the connections. And there's like a tension, I think, in the piece, with longing, right? Like the goose, she's longing for the grass on the other side of the fence. The dog is longing for the goose. The chicken is longing for water, and just the whole like being somewhere where you don't want to be. Um, another connection that I made as well was, and this was pretty recently, and I thought it was pretty sweet, was that geese actually they can symbolize inner wisdom and protection and devotion, and so I thought, oh, those things are expressed in the piece as well.
How much did you know about like the overarching theme or what the theme would end up being when you first sat down to write?
Um, I like I said, I kind of just I had this image. A lot of my stuff starts off as like an image or something that I want to capture. And as I was writing it, I was thinking of, how do we tell our tales, like our fables and our fairy tales. And so I tried to kind of mimic that experience going through and like that storytelling. But yeah, I was trying to show the tension there and the connection between like myself and these animals.
Um, we appreciated the repeated references to water, from the humid, moldy room at the beginning of the piece to its residue on the rusted chain link enclosure that contains the chicken and the gander, even to the end of the piece when the gander drips the water onto the chicken to drink. Um, what do you think is or what's the significance of water in the piece?
I loved how you pointed that out, because it's something that I've also been noticing in some of my other pieces. I have I have water just kind of appearing in a lot of my pieces, and I don't know if it's on a subconscious level for me, but I know like we live on a water planet. We are water. I love being outdoors. I love kayaking. So water is very much a part of my life. And I liked it as a symbol in this piece. At the at the beginning, we see water as kind of corrosive, with the rust and what have you. We see it dirty, we see it stagnant, and that's kind of the perspective from the narrator, like myself. How initially coming into this situation of being somewhere you don't want to be, and just going through those motions, but then after witnessing that interaction between the gander and the chicken, and just realizing, that perception shift from disappointment to gratitude. I liked how the water no longer appeared in a negative light, that it became more clear and almost sacred at the end, like offering it to the chicken. Um, just how also water can be it's a necessity for all of us, and it's very unifying. So you see that with the chicken and the gander, and how I present the water to the chicken at the end.
There's such power in this piece's brevity. I think I counted like less than 500 words, and every detail seems necessary and really rewards with repeated readings, like, for instance, the repeated water related imagery, or we're talking before about the sense of entrapment at the beginning. And so we're wondering, did you envision this piece as always being this short in length? And is length something that you consider in the outset of your writing process?
So I thank you. Thank you for thinking so. I tend to like reread and revise obsessively over the smallest things, even punctuation. So if I see there's a spot where I can kind of fold different meanings, like have different layers, I love to do that. I think it's very fun. But as far as length goes, with my process, I very rarely think about like, okay, this is going to be this long. I kind of, like I mentioned before, I sit down, or when I come to the page, I think about, okay, what am I trying to capture and convey, like a frame almost. So if I have my image, if I know what I want to talk about, I'll start it off as like a snapshot, or like a little vignette, if you will. And when it comes to my short form, it's usually, it kind of resembles a poem at the beginning, honestly. And I do write poetry as well, so I find that kind of distillation uh, very helpful for me to get to the meat of the piece, like to get to the important bits, and I just kind of let the piece go, or as long as it needs to, in order for me to convey what I'm trying to say.
For our last question, we wanted to ask something that we ask all of our guests. Do you have a nonfiction reading recommendation?
So I am very behind. I have a huge list of to be read, but I am currently going through this the Rose Metal Press Field Guide to Writing Flash Nonfiction, um, edited by Dinty Moore, I believe. I've only gone in maybe like less than half of the way, but it's a really enjoyable piece. It's like a craft anthology. I think there's 26 different authors in there, who they each have like an introduction essay that they write about a certain element of the flash nonfiction, and then they follow it up with an exercise to encourage the reader to work on that aspect, and then they'll share either a flash nonfiction piece that they themselves have written, or one that they enjoy that talks to their introduction essay. And so I'm really enjoying it so far.